Wow, buenos dias. I had to look back. I was like, is he really, he's talking about me? He's talking about me? It's always really difficult, right, to hear, or at least for me, it's never been really easy to receive compliments or to receive, you're doing a good job, right? Or, qué bueno lo haces, right? It's always so challenging for us to receive that praise. And so that never goes away. But it is a real honor to be here with you all. I want to take a moment, first and foremost, to acknowledge all the people that have made it possible for you all to be here today, including with the stewards of this land, right, from the local tribal peoples, our grandparents, our ancestors, our parents, the folks that run this program, right, because it really is a village effort to be able to put something like this together. And I got to tell you, I'm really honored to be a part of it today, right? I'm really honored to have your time and to come in and to see so much beautiful work being conducted on so many different levels of age, so much collaboration, so much spirit, so much willingness to give. And I think it's very valuable. And I want to honor your time for sacrificing part of your day today, for being here, for you parents, for bringing your children, because I know sometimes as a parent that can be really challenging. And for you students, right, for sacrificing your morning cartoons and the morning sleep and the cereal, and to making the trip out here to the college to invest in yourself. So muchas gracias, right? I mean that from the bottom of my heart. My name is Alberto Vasquez, as Robbie mentioned. I'm from UC San Diego. I'm from the San Diego area. I work for UC San Diego at a place called Create, which is a really long name, so we'll call it Create. But we do a lot of equity research and educational research down in San Diego. So what that means is that we like to make sure that all people have the same opportunity, regardless of where they come from, regardless of how they look, regardless of the socioeconomic status or how much money they have. So that's really kind of at the front and center of the work that we do. And today I want to talk to you. I had the opportunity to talk to a few of you yesterday. And I asked the question, I said, well, who knows about this thing called impostor syndrome? And only one person raised their hand, right? And it really spoke to my heart about opening up the conversation, because I knew we were going to have a big array of ages here, right? There's going to be people of all ages here today with us. So I wanted to make sure I touched on that conversation and kind of put that on the focus for today. And I'm going to share my story along the way, and I'm going to share some other information, but I want us to come back, for the sake of today, to come back to this imposter syndrome thing. Who's heard of imposter syndrome here? Fantastic. I'm glad it's only a few of you, because when we're done, all of you are going to hear it, right? And I need you to be aware. So pongan atención, no se me duerman. All right, let's listen up and feel free to ask questions. I'll try to make sure we have a portion of the talk towards the end, so you can ask any questions. And I like to say that I keep it 100%, right? Meaning that if there's going to be a place where you're going to feel safe enough to ask those questions that you think are too silly, or that you think, man, I don't want to ask that. I'm going to seem like I'm dumb, or like I don't know. Or for the parents that are here, if you want to learn and really be engaged, right here's your time and your place. So feel free to ask me, because I can talk to you as a parent, I can talk to you as an educator, I can talk to you as as the son, or so there's so many different capacities that I hope that you get comfortable with and being able to ask those questions. So I showed this yesterday too, but how many people in the room ever felt like this? Let me read it to you just in case. All these people really seem to have it together, and I still have no idea what's going on. Go on, raise your hands. Raise your hands. Raise them proudly. Go ahead, don't be shy. I don't care what age you are. It's okay. Thank you for raising your hands and being brave. I needed you to raise your hands because I need you to understand that when we feel like that, you're not alone. When we feel like that, it's very normal for us to feel like that. Even as a parent, sometimes I feel like that, right? Like I'm supposed to have it all figured out, and I don't know what I'm doing, because my dad wasn't even around. So how am I supposed to know how to be a good dad? So I want to normalize this feeling for you. And I want to also ask, wrong direction. How many of you, when it comes to thinking about why things happen to you, we kind of go through a process like this? We think, man, it was just dumb luck. We think, it's only happening, something good's happening because something bad is going to happen after. Sometimes, right? We think karma's going to get it. You think it's a mistake sometimes. Sometimes we don't even know, right? We're just kind of going with the flow. We never seem to want to take ownership, just like when Robbie introduced me earlier, take ownership of, that's me. I did that. I invested my time at Contra Costa Community College on Saturdays. I committed my time as a student going to tutoring. I sacrificed those extra hours of my life to go learn physics, to go learn math, to master some kind of topic that I'm struggling with, to find out how I can be a better parent, an understanding parent, how I can be informed. We're not so quick to give ourselves credit for that. But ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why we do that, right? There's a reason why we have difficulty normalizing those feelings for us. While there's a few reasons why that has come to be, I want to also normalize the fact that this is so common that it actually has a name, right? It's called impostor syndrome. And impostor syndrome basically is the fact that we're marked by the inability to internalize our accomplishments, and we have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. It could be that you get to a new school, you got accepted to a new program. It could be that you got a raise at work, got a promotion. Sometimes we don't even realize that we deserve to be right where we're at. We earned our seat at the table. Now, for the parents in the room, I want to remind you that sometimes this is what your children are dealing with. And for the students in the room, I want to remind you that this is already something you have to deal with in addition to everything else that you're going to have to deal with as you continue to move forward in school and in life. So I want you to be prepared. I want you to be informed. I want you to understand that when you doubt yourself, when situations are already bad, maybe in the household, maybe in your community, that you still will have to deal with this. But I need you to be aware that this exists so that you can take the power away from it. So that you don't let this limit your potential. Now, there's a lot of different contributing factors, right, when we talk about imposter syndrome. And some of that can stem from inadequate K-12 education and guidance. The reality is that even though school systems are meant to help us, sometimes there's individuals there that, or resources that are limited that prevent us from really acquiring that assistance that we require or that ability to fulfill our potential, right? And so sometimes it could be that they don't offer the classes that you need to go to the UC. Sometimes it could be that they don't offer a significant enough challenging course, in math or in reading, right? Something that's going to challenge you. It could be, again, that the lack of resources or supports or options. It could be, and I've heard horror stories, right, where even counselors say, well, you don't really want to go to college anyway, right? Why don't you think about going over here? Or the way that we stigmatize community colleges, say, well, community college, man. If you don't go to a 4-year, it's not good enough. Well, that's a bunch of crap. It doesn't matter how you get there. What matters is where you end up. There's unhealthy, normalized lifestyles, and I'll talk about that just a little bit, but things that we begin to experience in our lives that we don't even realize that are toxic for us. It could be our own family members. It could be the way that we do things. Some of those things could be cultural or environmental, right? We'll talk about that in just a minute. It could be low expectations either from ourselves or from others. It could be identity. And for this example, I wanted to use masculinity, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of our boys, a lot of our young men struggle And it's not really surprising because, when you look at how things kind of overlap, we live in the U.S. that has the highest rate of incarceration in all the world. 1 in 3 kids, predominantly of color, have a parent that's been involved in the criminal justice system somehow. And the majority is usually guys that go to prison or jail. So I say that because I want you to understand that means that there's a lot of kids out there that don't have dads. Now, it's not to say that moms don't do a great job, because they do a fantastic job. But for the example here, what it means is that we have boys like myself who didn't have somebody to turn to and understand what it meant to be a man in my case. What was that going to be defined as? How we had developed an apprehension to ask for help. How in certain communities we were going to be criminalized and stereotyped. How there's unfair disciplinary practices in some of our schools, right? And based on the color of your skin, we're either going to say, oh, well, it's because, Johnny just has some things going on. No, it's because this guy is always causing trouble, and we're going to kick him out. And then that leads us to all these other programs and all these continuation schools where you get lumped up with a bunch of other folks who aren't being invested into, and then, wow, surprisingly, you don't end up finishing some things. Microaggressions. I won't go too much into detail because we're limited on time, but even the way that we receive them, right, and how we dish them out sometimes and we're not even aware. Things like, oh, it's a good thing that you're pretty, right? Oh, you speak so well. Perceptions of school as a feminine domain. For some of the guys that I've gotten to work with, they think, oh, no, well, I gotta go work in construction, or I gotta be a mechanic. I gotta work with my hands. That's the capacity that I have as a man of color. And so these are just some of the examples, right? That's just for masculinity, right? We're not even talking about all the other things that students deal with, that people deal with. So these are all contributing factors that lead to us doubting our abilities. And sometimes what happens is that when we couple that with the way that certain systems are created, certain systems will say that they want to help something and they think they create something to be able to help, like a program or a service, but it still doesn't take into account your uniqueness. It doesn't take into account that you have to take care of your mom or your dad. It doesn't take into account that you have 2 jobs. It doesn't take into account that maybe you're in a one parent household and you have to take care of your little brothers and sisters. Doesn't take that stuff into account. So what happens is that the systems end up saying, well, we created these programs, but you're not taking advantage of it. And then I have to feel like there's something wrong with me because I couldn't benefit from that program, which from the beginning wasn't really designed for me anyway. And so what ends up happening is, again, it's reinforced that something is wrong with you. It's reinforced that you will doubt yourself. So the goals are going to be, for the end of this conversation, is to really raise awareness of the challenges that are faced by students, right? So that parents can understand that better. And students, you can prepare yourself to identify ways to improve your ability to navigate new spaces. And I'm talking again to everybody in the room, whether it's transitioning from elementary to middle, whether it's going from high school to the college, whether it's for a parent not knowing what the heck is going on in school and familiarizing yourself with education, with financial aid. ¿Cómo que te vas a ir a la escuela? ¿Cómo voy a pagar, right? How am I going to pay for that? Let me tell you how. And I'm so glad that you're here because you can learn. You're taking an active approach to that. And also inviting you to identify and to soften or mitigate your personal biases and your privilege. Do we all know what bias means? No? Very honest answer. I love it. So bias means when I favor something over something else. That's, I think, the most basic answer I can give you. When I have my personal preference about things. So what I mean when I say that is that, am I being selfish about things? Is it selfish, motivation? Or am I exercising a privilege that somebody else doesn't have? And what does that look like? So my background is I grew up in San Diego in a very poor community. Excuse me. I was telling folks yesterday, I grew up in a very normal neighborhood, right? Who grew up in a normal neighborhood? All right. A lot of normies in here. I grew up in a normal neighborhood too. It was a neighborhood with gangs and drugs, violence. You know, people went to jail. That was normal for me. I also grew up in a very normal household, right? It was substance abuse, domestic violence. Ultimately, my mom had to leave my dad because he would hurt her so much that she decided to pack up her bags. And it was really difficult for a mom to leave with 4 kids and start working at a shipyard, 12-hour days to take care of us. And I want to tell you a quick story. I didn't really go into the story yesterday, but I want to tell you a story about brokenness, right? And how we come to be very broke sometimes. And I don't mean financially broke. I mean spiritually broke. And I also want to talk to you about sacredness. And I want to share a story with you that really resonates, and I hope it's going to resonate with you, of a little boy. Of a little boy who had seen a lot of trauma, who had seen a lot of people get hurt, who had seen a lot of bloody sights. A little boy who was lonely in the world, right, and who wanted just somebody that he could look up to. A little boy whose dad had taken off because he decided that he wanted to get high and drink, and that was more important than being there for that little boy. A little boy that had to walk himself to school since the age of 6 by himself because his mom had to go to work really early before the light came up. And this little boy would go to school and do the best job that he could. And he'd follow all the rules that they told him to follow. They said, listen in class. They said, do your homework. Read that book. And that little boy would do all those things. And one day, they let him know that he was going to be recognized. That we're going to recognize him at the ceremony, right, at this assembly. You have assemblies at your schools? They give you certificates para todo, right? You know, you showed up, you know, te cambiaste, te lavaste los dientes, right? All kinds of different certificates that they give you. Boy, was this kid was excited. He was excited. He was going to go in front of this assembly and he was going to be recognized for doing such an awesome job, for following the rules, for doing what was expected of him. So he shows up. And in the past, when he had seen all these other assemblies and all these little kids get recognized, he would always see the moms come up to meet their kids, to give them porras, right? To cheer them on. And boy, is that kid excited. He was excited. He was going to see his mom. He was going to be excited. He was going to run to her and share. And she never showed up. She never showed up. It's difficult to understand something so small, such a small instance can make such a great impact. Because from that point forward, he stopped caring. He stopped caring. He said, I follow the rules. I do everything I'm supposed to. She doesn't show up. She doesn't care, why should I? Some of you ever felt like that? I'm sure you have, even if you don't raise your hands. That moment was such a defining moment for me because for the next 15 years of my life, I didn't care. I stopped caring. I didn't see myself important enough to invest in myself or take care of myself because nobody else cared anyway. And it really compromised anything that I can do with myself. So not surprisingly, I got into a lot of trouble. At some point, I ended up being homeless. I had a dysfunctional background. And not surprisingly, I ended up going to jail since a young boy, my 14, 15 years old, through most of my 20s, which I spent in prison. And so I share that with you because for a large part of my life, that's what I thought it was going to be. That's all I thought I was worth. I didn't give myself credit for much else. I didn't have much support. I didn't know people that went to college. I didn't know people that cared about me. All I knew was the hustle that I had learned on the street. The mentality of taking care of myself, because nobody else was going to do that. And so this was my reality for a long time. Until I realized that I have 4 kids, right? And my 2 youngest kids had to suffer me going in and out. And I realized that I was doing the exact same thing to them that my dad had done to me. He had abandoned me. He abandoned me. He left me to fend for myself. And even though I had promised that I would never do that to my kids whenever I had them, I started doing that, and I didn't even realize it. And I started realizing that I didn't want to be that old man that I was hanging out in jail with that would have a loved one that they lost or a kid that they couldn't see. And so I said, something's got to change. I needed to also be aware that there was a lot of different things that impacted me, right? And the decisions that I make. Some of them were personal, right? My self-esteem, the way that I perceived things, what was normal for me, right? Because when I was on the street, it was normal for me to do dumb things to take care of myself. And then after a while, you do things so regularly that that becomes your normality, right? So when I ask, what was normal to you, right? Did you grow up in a normal neighborhood? Yeah, well, according to my perspective, it was pretty normal. So that's very different from every person, right? But that impacts the way that we conduct ourselves. And then culturally, we see what those different expectations are. When I started wanting to do things different, actually, when I started wanting to go to school, which I'll talk about in just a minute, I told my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, that I wanted to go to school. And she said, "You want to go do what? You want to go to school?" She said, "Why don't you get a job like a real man and provide for your kids?" Ouch. But she was right. That's important. That's the reality. The reality is you got to pay bills, right? And good intentions don't put gas in my tank. Good intentions do not pay the rent. But that was a cultural implication, right? Environmentally, the neighborhood wasn't that great, that was going to help me, that was going to provide me opportunities. Psychologically, I had dealt with a lot of trauma, as most of us do. Academically, I definitely was not provided assistance. People did not believe in me. Financially speaks for itself. And socially, right, the expectation was that I was going to fail because you're going to end up just like your dad. You're going to end up just like such and such. So it's not surprisingly, right? And we're talking, and there's also disabilities that we also need to consider that are seen and unseen, right? That sometimes we don't even take into account. We're not empathetic, meaning we don't take other people into account. So I'll fast forward real quick because I know we're short on time this morning, but I'll tell you my journey. I decided to go to school for 3 main reasons. There were pretty selfish reasons, but they were my reasons to go to school. And one of them, and I'll be completely honest with you, right? I said I was going to keep it 100%. I went to go get financial aid because I heard I can get paid to go to school. I went to go to school because if I stayed in school, I would stay out of trouble. So if I didn't do something good, I would do something bad. And the third one, I went to go meet girls, right? So I was single. And so that was supposed to be funny, by the way. Y'all didn't laugh at that. Y'all too serious on me right now. And so I say that because we're going to have different motivational factors, right? Different things are going to draw you to do different things. And that's okay. But for me, it was that combination of things and wanting to invest in myself that when I went to school, I was overwhelmed because things were really weird. I was in my late 20s. I was going to school with 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. I didn't know how to use a computer. The teacher would say, I'm going to send you an email. And I'm like, ¿Qué es eso? Es un email. Listen, that's part of our privilege, right? We don't think about it, but not everybody knows how to use a computer. Take our parents, right? Our parents don't know how to use computers. I hear you. Sometimes as students, we have to be the secretary. We got to be the appointment setter. We got to be the interpreters because our parents don't know how to do that. Parents, sometimes that's an added stressor for our kids. And it's great that we're having this conversation because of that. Because we're here to learn about each other and how we support each other better, right? Some of the ways that have helped me to dismantle some of these things that contributed to my imposter syndrome have been creating a culture of collaboration, meaning I learned how to work with other people, right? I learned how to realize that I have a deficit sometimes with certain areas that I don't know or understand certain things and that I need help. And that me asking for help is going to be okay. Implementing a learning culture, right? A culture meaning that it's not a temporary thing. That means that I'm committed to my learning every day in every different way. Learning about services that are provided for me, learning about summer research programs for all you students in here, internships, different conferences, right? Learning about connecting with professionals from similar backgrounds or alumni from this school or from other schools that are connected to your wonderful program here, Metas. Conveying mutual respect, right? And being down to earth, being very genuine with people. Why do I got to make people feel like they should know all these other extra things because I want to speak all fancy? Inculcate a sense of being, right? Qué palabrota, ¿verdad? Why? Let me connect with you. Let me let you know that it's going to be all right. And I understand you and I get you. And you know what? I don't know what this means. I need help. It's okay for us to convey that. Becoming mission-centered, right? Set your goals, set your metas, right? And move towards that. And create your own opportunities and be genuine. I get to teach, which is a real blessing for me. I paroled in September of 2007, and I'm a teacher now. I'm a professor at a community college. And I work at a university. Thank you. And I thank you very much. And I get to work at a university where I get to leverage the university's resources to connect with communities like ours. I get to use tortillas to teach science and chemistry and physics. I use lowriders to teach engineering and physics. I take things that we know and I extract the science from that so that you can realize that you've already been great for a long time. Your people have been great for a long time. You've been a scientist and an engineer. You just don't realize it. Every time you make a cup of coffee, you're doing solutions. Every time you make Kool-Aid or suco, you're making solutions. You do science all the time. But you don't realize that. We're under this misconception that being a scientist means that I have to be an old white man in a lab coat somewhere far, far away. When you're a scientist and you're an engineer. So we got to think about that, right? I get to do that. I get to connect with my students. I get to show them that science doesn't mean that it has to be very regimented and serious. It means that I ask my students, student, how are you doing? Oh, you're hungry, you haven't eaten? Well, let's get you something to eat, because it's hard for you to focus on what we're going to learn today if you're worried about all that other real stuff that's happening. So again, we have to learn when we have to ask for help, right? I got to work in local government, same thing. A lot of you might not realize that there's a lot of overlap when you do science. It could be government, it could be public health. A lot of different areas kind of overlap. And so when I got to work in local government, I got to launch a campaign basically to educate our community members about resources, about tormentas that were coming, right? Big storms, about sandbags, about renter's insurance. Because I know that for my communities that I grew up in, when people lost stuff, they lost everything they owned. So I made it my point to use my voice to be able to tap into those resources so we can connect with those communities and address those needs that they have. So that's your call to action, right? Whatever your background is, wherever you come from, it's your opportunity to address that need that you didn't have. So what are you going to do with that? My graduate research, when I went to UC San Diego to do my master's, was just an example of that, right? So I decided to look at watershed water quality and look at, do poorer neighborhoods have worse water quality? Does the fact that my community, which had industrial, commercial, and residential areas right next to each other and no parks, does that have to do something with the way the water quality was? So that's what I wanted to study. And yes, it did. So what can we do, right? I think as individuals, we're always like, okay, this sounds good, Beto. There's a lot of great opportunities. There's a lot of things I really didn't even cover, right? I didn't even cover the nuances in my life. And you got to realize, you got to give me a break, because it's a very wide spectrum of ages here and different experiences. So I'm trying to convey things that will hopefully hit a different point for different age groups and still be able to be effective, right? So discúlpenme, if it's a big spectrum of things, but I'm trying my best. I did want to let you know that individually, what we can do, whatever age we're at, right? Like these gentlemen back here, we could be good listeners, right? We could be good listeners. We can remain teachable and vigilant. Parents, that means for us too. I was having a conversation with some of the folks that were here yesterday, and I told them, at my house, we do family meetings now. I have 4 kids. I got 2 that are 21, one that's 8, and the other one that's 6. And we do family meetings at my house, and my kids just think that was weird, man. They were like, Dad, what's that? ¿Qué es eso? What do you mean family meeting? What? And now, you know what? My 21-year-old calls me up. He doesn't even live at home. And he's like, hey, Dad, can we get a family meeting tonight? And I'm just like, for real? You want to do a family meeting? But it's a sacrifice, right? To have my kids call me and tell me, hey, Dad, I need to sit down with y'all and we need to talk about stuff. As a parent, what that means is that I got to sit down and shut up and learn how to listen. Because the way I was raised, it's going to be like this and that's the way it is. Yeah. But that's not going to work anymore. Our kids need to know that they're being heard. And our parents need to know that you realize that we need to be heard too. And we want to be acknowledged too as parents. There's one thing that I learned when that whole experience happened with my mom and the auditorium and all that, was that now as a parent I realize that we make a lot of sacrifices that as kids we don't see. And we don't realize and we don't value. And so for the little ones in the room, if Dad's not around, if Mom's not around, I can't excuse them, right? I can't say it's because of this, that, or the other, because I don't know your situation. But as a dad, I can tell you that if there was somewhere that I really want to be more than anywhere else, it would be with my kids. It would be with my kids. So I don't know if that's going to do much for you, but I want you to try to just open up the way you understand things and let things impact you, right? So I want you to be aware as individuals that I want you to be genuine and real, right? With the way you feel and how you project things, right? To our kids or to our parents. Professionally, for those professionals in here, I want you to be willing to try new approaches and techniques. Address things a little bit differently. Give space to new things. Be student-centered. Be an advocate. Institutionally, for those who have any impact with that, let's start to invest in students so that we can give them jobs or teach them how to be professionals moving forward, right? Again, it's a big spectrum of things, and some of the stuff you might grasp and some of it might not make any sense to you, and that's okay. There will be a time. There's a season for all things. For me, my commitment has been, now that I'm a scientist, I'm an educator, I have the opportunity to create programs and initiatives and go back to the same guys that I help that are getting out of prison or getting out of jail or in mal pasos, right, that are doing bad choices, and I expose them to new opportunities, just like these gentlemen here. I also get the opportunity to take students out to different experiences, like Sacredness, which is a big conference, right? Or just to go meet people that look like them, that are professionals, that are PhDs, that are doctors, that are researchers, so that they can see something that they can be. Because unfortunately, a lot of us don't ever leave our neighborhoods, so we don't know how big the world really is. I've had the opportunity too, as I run a nonprofit down in San Diego, and it's focused on guys that are re-entering into society, providing them opportunities. So, some of the things that we do is we do an annual community graduation, and it's to honor all high school, community college, and university graduates who don't have support from families, whose families don't know how to celebrate those milestones, right? Because we're quick to get on you because you didn't finish high school, but we're not as quick to celebrate when you do finish, right? Because there could have been a million other times that you didn't finish. And that's going to be your journey sometimes, right? So I get to do that. I get to work with, I go back to the jails now, and I'm teaching future professors how to work with folks in the jail. I call it my cells to cells program, right? Because we take cells to the cells. Like that? No? Y'all are too serious, man, for real. So anyways, it's dope, right? So now I get to go back in. I still deal with trauma when I go in, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to behave in these places, right? I'm traumatized by it, and that's got to be real for me. Anyways, I show opportunities that you take into, that you can fall into, that you can do, that sometimes you have to create. The other things that I want you to take away is that you are all jewels, community jewels. Y'all follow that? Are you Googling it, mijo? Are you Googling it? No? Okay, so you're a community jewel. You know that, right? You know you're valuable. You know that every piece, every facet of yours contributes to your worth. As a son, one day as a father, one day as an employee, as a student. You're not separate identities. You're the same person with multiple sides, right? Just like a diamond. But all those sides make that diamond very valuable, and I want you to realize that. I want you to be familiar with social capital, and if you don't know what it is today throughout your classes, you better ask your mentors and your tutors to share that with you. I want you to learn how to advocate for yourself. Does anybody know what that means? You know what that means? What does that mean? Okay, so very good. So if I'm talking about self-advocacy, what are you doing? So if you're advocating for self, what does that mean? That's right. So that's you telling people how great you are, right? Because nobody else is going to do that for you like you. Embracing the challenge, right? What is another word for embrace? Huh? Bring in, okay, so a 3-letter word for embrace. Facilita, facilita. What is it? Hug, right? So if I'm going to go hug this señora right here, right? We're going to go and we're going to hug and she's going to go like this or I'm going to go like this and we're going to move all these articulated movements that happen really quick, right? We don't even think about it. We just, we do it. That's how you have to be prepared for your challenges because they're going to exist. You're going to apply for jobs. You're going to apply for scholarships. You're going to apply to transfer to university and sometimes you're going to hear no. But you know what? I want you to be prepared to hear those no's so that when you hear it, no te agüitas, right? I want you to learn how to love yourself and validate yourself and know that you realize that you're aware that you belong where you're at. The last thing that I'm going to leave you with is I want you to please embrace your sacredness, right? Your sacredness, but also embrace your brokenness. What does that mean? That means that we realize that we're hurt individuals. We realize that we've overcome a lot of different things and we've experienced a lot of pain, but we also realize that we have a lot of value. We were meant to do great things, each and every one of you. And I'm not talking about Angry Birds. We were meant to do great things, ladies and gentlemen. How are you living up to your greatness? Or are you? Are you not being merciful enough with yourself? Are you not showing grace to yourself? Because if you're not, you can start today. You start loving yourself, start forgiving yourself. So what? We make bad choices. I've made a ton of bad choices in my life. But ladies and gentlemen, your past do not dictate your future, right? And you get to decide what path you're going to take and where you're going to go. Parents, that goes for you too. Parenting is an ongoing journey. It's never going to end. My kids still are my kids even though they moved out. We all have a responsibility to each other, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what your age is. For all you children in the room, we love you. For all you students in the room, we're proud of you. Very proud of you. For all the sacrifices that you make. For all the times that you go study, yes, you too. For all the times that you go study, for all the times that you said no to peer pressure and all those stupid things that your friends might be doing, we thank you for that. I thank you for that. Parents, for every time that you're willing to feel uncomfortable with a situation, I thank you for that because that means that you're trying something new. And I appreciate that. I want to honor all of you with that and recognize you for your efforts. And I want to thank you again, right? And these are my little ones, my little chavalitos, right? I do a lot of child labor at my house. And I strongly believe, no, puro pedo, I don't. But, these are my kids, and I got to show a picture of them. Why? Because one, because I'm missing them right now. And two, because, we don't realize all the time, but they watch everything that we do, right? You all are watching us. We watch each other, and we want to emulate what we see. My kids, man, he sees me working on cards and wearing my little tie. El otro, I put him to work because I don't want my kids to be huevones, right? I don't want them to be lazy. There's hard work that goes into things, folks. Waking up every morning to go to school is hard work. Having to watch your little brothers and you have to study for your test is hard work. Parents, it's hard work. Just take it easy on them. Give them some space sometimes. It's hard work, ladies and gentlemen. And I thank you and value you for that. I'll leave you with this last quote that from Jackie Robinson, right, that says that a life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. Stop living a life just for yourself. Remember that you represent not only you, but your household, your community, your neighborhood, whatever you want to call it, right? You represent a lot more than just yourself. And so as we stand as one, we represent the thousands and thousands and thousands that have come before you, right? To paraphrase Maya Angelou. So keep that in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure spending the morning with you. Thank you.